Argentina won the championship, soccer championship, and some people ask me what I think about that. And what can I say? You know, it's all about flag waving and singing national anthems. It's got a lot to do with nationalism. And I got a problem with nationalism because my experience is that, you know, what you can do for your country is one thing. What your country can do for you is, in my experience, never happened. Okay. Politicians at a given moment, they do whatever they need to do to stay in power or to make money or whatever. So they won't do anything for you. And at that moment in time, they are the country. Okay, the country you're trying to defend. So yeah, it's all about flag waving, national anthems. You know, when you go to all these Olympics and soccer and whatever international championships where countries are competing, it's all about nationalism. That's all it is. And talking about what your country can do for you, here we have a gentleman. His name was John F. Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy. And apparently the other day they released some more documents, and we're talking about 1963. I remember it well because, I mean, I think anyone in those days remembers it well. And I was only 11 years old, and still I remember very well what happened that day. Anyways, they released some documents, now almost 60 years old, and essentially they're trying to find out if there's any information there that would clarify the situation. And I'm saying, of course not. The only purpose of holding all this is so that they can have, or at least the effect, right, is so that the government can later say, well, the reason we were withholding all this is because we were trying to hide our operational secrets, you know, and so there won't be any information regarding Lee Harvey Oswald or whatever happened 60 years ago. You know, that's a separate issue. The separate issue, and all I can tell you is how I look at it. I say that those three gentlemen at the bottom were at the top of the conspiracy to kill Kennedy. Lots of people involved, hundreds. Okay, and and this is my take on it, just my personal take of things that made me think that these gentlemen were the ones who did the whole operation. Here it is, just a snapshot, things that came out of my mind. Okay, I'm sure there's a lot more than these, but you know, the magic bullet, I don't buy it. It's against physics. It's nonsense that the United States government had to put out there to have some kind of theory. Everyone running up the grassy knoll, Uncle Sam collecting cameras in Dealey Plaza. Films that they never gave back. A lot of people complained about that. They said they had filmed stuff and it never came back to them. Zapruder film, one that eventually reached the public a little too late. That's one issue. But then they took out some of the first few frames, and I think that those were important. Okay, Parkland Hospital, they denied the doctors who were working on Kennedy to do an autopsy. They took the body out of there, or like the movie says, the JFK movie says, it was a getaway. They were running with the cadaver all the way to Maryland. Oswald, he was a naval intelligence, in naval intelligence. They sent him to the Soviet Union, who knows for what. When he came back, allegedly, you know, came back to the United States, and no one debriefed him. I mean, here you have an intelligence officer. He leaves the United States. He comes back, and it's just everything's hunky dory, no problem. And then obviously there's a connection between George Bush, father, right? He was CIA. He claims he wasn't at the time, but it turns out that George de Mohrenschildt, the guy who got Oswald his job at the book depository, he wrote a letter to Bush, and Bush answered him, so they knew each other. Okay, and obviously that you got to look up the Mohrenschildt to find out how they also knew each other from the past. Anyways, Mohrenschildt, Oswald, and George Bush. Now that's a big coincidence there, you know. Tremendous one for me. Assassination of key witnesses and others like Hale Boggs. His plane went down. Charles Nicoletti and Mohrenschildt, they were murdered on the same day. I'm sorry, they suicided themselves. 10 shots in the head, I think it was. Mohrenschildt, I'm sorry, Nicoletti. I think they put him in a one of those cement barrels and sent him down the ocean, or maybe that was Johnny Roselli. Who knows anymore? Lee Bauer is a guy who was at the tower looking down at the grassy knoll. They had to get rid of him. All these people, by the way, Nicoletti and Mohrenschildt, Lee Bauer, they were all about to testify. Nicoletti was. I'm not sure about the Mohrenschildt. William Fitzer, the guy who took pictures over there at the Naval Hospital, he took pictures he wasn't supposed to. And Sam Giancana, Johnny Roselli, those people, they knew too much. They had to get rid of them. Kilgallen, same. She was a reporter, and they had to get rid of all these people. Anyways, the doctored photos, no doubt about that. Limo protected at Parkland. They didn't let anybody near the car, and then they transferred and refurbished it, essentially destroying all the evidence. That's what they were up to. And Ruby Mafia, who was a guy who was given, the contract, either he killed Oswald, they went after him. And then the Warren Commission, they stacked the whole supposed commission, this jury, right? This judge slash jury with people like Ford and Dulles and Specter. So, those are my first off the head things that show me that this was a U.S. government operation. No doubt about it. Anyways, talking about U.S. government operations, one guy says Russia blew up their own pipelines, referring to the Nordstream 2 pipeline, to serve Gazprom from infinite arbitration suits. Well, I think we need to look at something that Biden said a few months ago, and throws the ball squarely in the hands of the United States. It's the United States who has to prove now that they did not do Nord Stream 2. Okay, not that they did, but the onus, the burden of proof is on the United States. And here's what Biden said.
If Russia invades, that means tanks or troops crossing the border of Ukraine again. Then there will be no longer a Nord Stream 2. We will bring an end to it.
How will you do that exactly, since the project and control of the project is within Germany's control?
We will, I promise you, we'll be able to do that.
Okay, so the ball is in Biden's court right now, not in Putin's court. And if the United States did it, or did it through one of its proxies, be it Israel or the great United Kingdom, it just shows. If that's ever proven, right, then we have a case of terrorism. So let's hope they hide their tracks well. Anyways, here's another fellow. He says, USA has only been an empire for 50 to 110 years maximum. In fact, another fellow said the other day that empires last 400 years, and the United States, or 350, and the United States has been running for 345. So more or less what this fellow said. Well, actually, the Monroe Doctrine, 1823, to answer this gentleman, the European powers are obligated to respect the Western Hemisphere as the United States' sphere of interest. Okay, so anything in the Americas belongs to the United States since 1823. They were giving a word of warning to the Europeans: don't intervene here because you're going to mess with us. Okay, that's essentially what it was. And this is the map today. Okay, this is how the empire has expanded. The blue parts are the American empire. You have like an Arab empire, really a loose coalition of Arab countries. There are more countries than that speak Arab, but these are the ones that are actually like in a single block, you could say. And of course, there's fighting even within them. But these are the countries that right now control the oil, the petroleum, and the United States and other countries are trying to get to it or get favorable, deals. On the other side, you see China in red, and Russia, big Russia there, big country. And those are the three main empires on the earth today. India, well, it's not really an empire. It's not big militarily or economically. But since it's got a lot of people, a lot of countries are interested in selling to India at least, or having commerce with them. And that's more or less the state of the world today. You have countries like Japan, Australia out there in the east that are friendly with the United States, together with maybe Thailand and Philippines. And then you have the situation where, China is expanding, especially its military. And at some point, I think there's going to be a clash between these two empires. Now, will the U.S. empire come to an end and China surpasses it? Absolutely not. Okay, no way that's ever going to happen, in my opinion. The United States is going to make sure that China does not surpass it militarily. Okay, and one of the problems there is that China's in its own region, whereas the United States has to send all kinds of ships, especially to that region, to more or less protect, Taiwan, Japan, Australia, and so on. And so the question is whether it's going to be ultimately a question of money, whether the United States can support all the military installations that it's going to need to hold China back. So we'll just have to see what happens. But right now I see that that's gearing up. It's taking wind. And I think at some point China and the United States will be confronting each other in a little more than just economically or in economic ways. And here, let me give you a reason why I also think that. Here's good old Germany, okay? And Germany's military started or isolated $100 billion that they're going to be investing in weapons. Here's one of the powers right after World War II that was told not to have weapons or to have a big military. And now the opposite is occurring. A big change in the politics of Germany. They're going to start investing in weapons, and not for Ukraine. They're investing for weapons for themselves, as it says there. And then not only them, but we have Japan as well, just in case. Another of the losers in World War II, and they're investing $300 billion in weapons when they said they will go to war no more. Or like, who was it, Chief Joseph, one of the Indian tribes in the United States, American Indians, and he says, I will fight no more forevermore. And Japan said that, but they changed their minds. Now they're going to invest $300 billion in weapons to fight perhaps China, but you never know. Sometimes these alliances change, and countries or the politicians of those countries backstab those of the other country. Happens all the time. It happens throughout history. Will Japan be an enemy of the United States? Will Germany ever be an enemy of the United States? Well, we don't know what's coming up. Maybe some rightist groups take over Germany, maybe some kamikazes or whatever take over Japan. So you never know what happens in countries. You don't even know if the United States might have a big change of heart and start laying off the liberalism and go completely in the other direction. So we don't know what happens, but everybody's gearing up for some kind of war because everybody's buying weapons right now. Okay, and final issue, a fellow says, altered behavior and roles of the sexes. Okay, what's going on today, all this talk about, transsexuals and homosexuals and so on. I guess he was referring primarily to that. And so he says, or he thinks, that all this is due to what? Brain damage done with birthing procedures, injections all throughout infancy, endocrine disruptors in food and water. And a lot of people think like he does. In other words, a lot of people think that a lot of what's going on as far as the social behavior, the big change in social behavior we see out there, is related to environment and the food that we eat. So they think it's primarily due to those things, that, it's these big pharmaceutical corporations that are just feeding us nonsense or garbage in the drugs that the doctors prescribe for us. And then the food is all poison. It's got all these things that they spray out there in the fields and so on. So they have this idea that it's all food and environment. I take a different view, okay, completely different view. I'm saying that's got maybe something to do with it, but I'd say very little. I think it's something else, and nobody seems to be identifying it. So you're going to hear it here because nobody else talks about it there. No geneticists, no doctors, no end of the world fanatics. None of those people talk about it. I talk about it because I think it's part of the process that's going on right now. And here's a snapshot of that, a picture of that. Okay, this is the global population the last 100,000 years. We have been inbreeding for over 200, 300,000 years. Our first forefathers to which we could trace our lineage could be anywhere between 200 and 300,000 years ago. Here I only put for 100,000 years because otherwise I'd have to stretch that line almost as a straight line to the end of time, to infinity. And so here you only have 100,000 years, but you can see what's happened to population. It's grown tremendously in the last 200 years on the planet. And we probably in the last 200 years have had more population than in all of history before that. Okay, and we were hunter-gatherers for most of that time, so small populations. They just hunted whatever they found out there, killed it, ate, and lived one more day. About 10,000 years ago, thereabouts, we went into agriculture. We started multiplying a little faster, okay, because we were able to predict, how much food there was. We could have children, more children, and so on. And after manufacturing, that's when our population took off. Okay, and now in services, it's coming down again. It's approaching asymptote one more time. But the point here is that for over 200,000 years, if that's where we can trace our lineage to the first humans to which we can still relate to, with which we could still have children if we had sex with them, reproductive sex, we've been inbreeding ever since. We haven't had any input of new genes from monkeys or elephants or, fruit flies. So my point here is that you can't inbreed. Mother Nature's mechanism to stop maybe population growth or to limit the infinity, you could say the eternity of a species is ultimately genetics. Okay, you can't continue forever because the more you inbreed, the more the children that come out of that process are going to have genetic problems. And I think that's where we're headed. And the only reason that's not going to kill humanity is because the economy is going to fall first. That's my theory. I'm saying that the global economy is going to collapse first, and we don't have to worry too much about dying in what is known as a background extinction, where our species alone, goes poof. Now, I think it's going to be the economy of the world that's going to beat that. And when that happens, not if, but when that happens, we're going to take all the mammals with us. We're going to kill everything out there. So it's going to be the end of the mammals as well. That's my heartwarming picture for you for this Christmas, okay?